Look, I'm just gonna be real with you about what happened because honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. I'm Kendra, I'm 24, and I thought I had this whole thing figured out. So Tyler and I had been together for 3 years, living in this tiny apartment that smelled like whatever our downstairs neighbor was cooking, and I was just dying inside, like literally suffocating. He'd come home from work every day, plop down on our secondhand couch, and we'd watch the same shows on Netflix while eating takeout because neither of us felt like cooking. Same routine, every single day. And I'm sitting there thinking, is this really it? Is this my life now? But here's the thing. I didn't want to be the witch who just breaks up with him out of nowhere. Tyler's one of those genuinely nice guys, you know? The kind who remembers to pick up your favorite coffee creamer without being asked, and actually listens when you complain about your day. So, I couldn't just be like, hey, I'm bored, peace out. That would make me look like the bad guy. Instead, I started doing what I do best, making him the problem. I'd get annoyed at literally everything. The way he chewed his cereal in the morning, how he left his work clothes on the bathroom floor, even how he breathed too loud when we were watching TV. I know, it sounds psychotic, but I needed reasons, right? I'd make these little comments like, you're just not the same person I fell in love with, or I feel like we're just roommates now. Classic stuff that makes guys panic and try harder. The Facebook posts were still all coupley though, had to keep up appearances. People would comment about how cute we were together, and I'd heart their comments while internally rolling my eyes. Between us, I was already scoping out other options on social media. You know how it is, you start liking old high school friends' posts, seeing who got divorced, who looks good now. That's when I noticed Jackson. Jackson Martinez. God, even his name sounded better than Tyler's. He was this guy from my chemistry class senior year, who I maybe talked to 5 times total, but he was always cute in that bad boy way. Leather jacket, drove a motorcycle, the whole thing. I saw he'd recently changed his relationship status to single, and started posting these gym selfies that were, well, let's just say 3 years of marriage had been good to him. So I started the whole reconnecting with old friends thing. Innocent comments on his posts at first, then sliding into his DMs with the classic, hey, how have you been? You know the drill. Meanwhile, I'm setting up Tyler for the big conversation. I picked a Sunday night because he's always more emotional on Sundays, worried about the work week starting. I went full vulnerable mode, brought up my dad leaving when I was 12, how I never learned to trust properly, all that trauma stuff that guys can't argue with. Told him I was having panic attacks about our relationship and needed space to heal myself before I could be the partner he deserved. Tyler's face just crumpled. He asked if we were breaking up, and I was like, no, baby, it's not a breakup, it's just temporary. I need to work on myself so I can love you properly. The manipulation was perfect because what's he gonna say to that? No, don't work on yourself? He'd look like a selfish jerk. He tried suggesting couples therapy instead, but I shut that down quick. Said I needed to fix myself first before we could fix us together. Total nonsense, but it sounded mature and healthy. He finally agreed to a trial separation with me, moving back to my parents' place temporarily. The whole time I'm making demands, though. Like, just because we're separated doesn't mean he can date other people. We're still committed, just working on ourselves separately. But also, he needs to give me space and not be clingy by texting too much. But also, he better still text me every day, because otherwise, how do I know he still cares? Yeah, I know how that sounds now, but at the time it made perfect sense to me. When I packed my stuff, I made sure to take pictures of myself crying, so I could post them later with some quote about self-growth and healing journeys. Tyler helped me carry boxes to my car and kept asking if I was sure about this. I almost felt bad seeing how hurt he looked. But then I remembered Jackson's last Instagram post and got excited about my new adventure. My parents were confused about why I was moving back home when Tyler seemed like such a great guy. But I fed them the same mental health line. Said I was going through something and needed their support. Mom made up the guest room and kept asking if Tyler and I were really okay. I assured her it was temporary, just some growing pains. That first night back in my childhood bedroom, I was texting Jackson until like 2 a.m. Just catching up, you know? Totally innocent. But I was already planning when we could meet up in person. Tyler texted me goodnight like he always did, and I sent back a heart emoji while simultaneously laughing at something Jackson had said. The separation was supposed to be about healing, but honestly, I felt more alive than I had in months. Within 3 days of moving back home, I was making plans to meet Jackson. The excitement of sneaking around made everything feel electric in a way Tyler never did. Our first meetup was at this gas station parking lot halfway between our towns. He kept complimenting how good I looked, saying he always thought I was cute in high school. Total lies probably, but it felt amazing after 3 years of Tyler seeing me in sweatpants. I created elaborate cover stories for my parents and Tyler. Job interviews, therapy appointments, meeting old girlfriends. Mom would ask how therapy was going, and I'd make up breakthrough moments while I was actually at Jackson's apartment learning things I definitely wasn't learning in therapy. The guilt was there at first, but I squashed it by rewriting history. Tyler was controlling, boring, took me for granted. Jackson made me feel special and wanted. It's amazing how fast you can convince yourself your relationship was terrible when you need to justify your actions. I kept Tyler on the hook though. Sweet texts about missing him, selfies looking sad and thoughtful, usually right after being with Jackson. The contrast was insane, glowing from attention and excitement, then immediately switching to wounded bird mode for Tyler's benefit. My sister caught on that something was up. She'd see me getting dressed up for supposed therapy appointments and make comments about how good my mental health seemed to be making me look. I mentally labeled her a jealous witch for questioning my story. The Facebook posts were peak manipulation. Quotes about self-discovery, sunset pictures with healing journey captions. People would comment with support while I planned my next meetup with Jackson. Tyler kept asking when I'd be ready to move back together, and I kept moving the goalposts. 2 weeks became a month, became 2 months. Each time he'd look disappointed but say he understood. God, he was so patient it almost made me angry. Jackson was the opposite of patient. Intense and demanding, made me feel like if I wasn't available when he wanted to see me, he'd find someone else. That danger kept me hooked. The physical chemistry was insane. All that sneaking around made everything more passionate than anything with Tyler. I started staying overnight at Jackson's, telling my parents I was having sleepovers with friends helping me through my rough patch. Mom would pack care packages, thinking I was having therapeutic girl time. The irony was unreal. The longer it went on, the more confident I became that I'd found my exit strategy. Tyler was my safety net. Jackson was my future. I just needed to figure out timing to make the transition without looking like the bad guy. What I didn't have time for was what happened next. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning, puking my guts out while my mom knocked asking if I had food poisoning. 3 pregnancy tests later, I was having a complete breakdown on my bedroom floor. The timing made everything complicated because I'd been with both Tyler and Jackson during the same few weeks. Tyler and I had gotten physical during one of our relationship check-ins, where I played the loving girlfriend missing her man. And Jackson and I had been busy too, so I genuinely didn't know whose baby this was. My first instinct was pure panic, followed by rage. How dare this happen right when I was getting my life figured out? I was furious at both of them for putting me in this position, which sounds crazy, but that's honestly how I felt. The worst part was realizing my perfect victim narrative was about to crumble. Hard to claim you're taking time to heal when you're obviously been doing very non-healing activities with someone who isn't your boyfriend. I drove to Jackson's that same day, thinking maybe this would push us towards something serious. Like maybe the universe was telling us we were meant to be together. I found him working on his motorcycle, all sweaty and hot, and for a second I got distracted thinking about how this could be our life. But when I told him about the pregnancy, his face went completely white. Not the good kind of shocked, the terrified kind. He immediately started asking if I was sure, if it could be someone else's, if I'd thought about taking care of it. Then he dropped the real bomb. He'd been talking to his ex-wife about getting back together for their kids' sake. Their divorce wasn't as final as his Facebook status suggested. I was just his midlife crisis rebound, not his new beginning. I completely lost it. Started screaming about him leading me on, ruining my relationship with Tyler for nothing, how he was just like every other guy who uses women. He told me to calm down, but I could see in his eyes he wanted nothing to do with me anymore. Driving home, I kept trying to call him, but he wasn't answering. By that night, he'd blocked my number. The next morning, blocked on social media too. My escape plan evaporated, and I was left holding the biggest secret of my life, with nowhere to turn. The reality started sinking in that I'd have to tell Tyler everything. Not just about the pregnancy, but about the whole lie I'd been living for months. Unlike Jackson, Tyler couldn't just block me and pretend I didn't exist. This was going to destroy everything. But first, I had to figure out how to spin this story so I didn't come out looking like the villain. Been with both Tyler and Jackson during the same few weeks. Tyler and I had gotten physical during one of our relationship check-in conversations where I was playing the loving girlfriend missing her man. And Jackson and I had been, well, we'd been busy. So I genuinely didn't know whose baby this was. My first instinct was pure panic, followed immediately by rage. How dare this happen to me, right when I was getting my life figured out? I was furious at both of them for putting me in this position, which I know sounds crazy, but that's honestly how I felt. Like they'd both failed me somehow. The worst part was realizing I had to tell people, and my perfect victim narrative was about to crumble. Hard to claim you're taking time to heal yourself when you're obviously been doing very non-healing activities with someone who isn't your boyfriend. I drove to Jackson's place that same day to tell him, thinking maybe this would push us towards something more serious. Like maybe this was the universe telling us we were meant to be together. I found him working on his motorcycle in his garage, all sweaty and hot, and for a second I got distracted thinking about how this could be our life. But when I told him about the pregnancy, his face went completely white. Not the good kind of shocked, the terrified kind. He immediately started asking if I was sure, if it could be someone else's, if I'd thought about taking care of it. The romantic fantasy I'd built up in my head shattered instantly. Then he dropped the real bomb. He'd been talking to his ex-wife about getting back together for their kids' sake. Apparently, their divorce wasn't as final as his Facebook status suggested. I was just his midlife crisis rebound, not his new beginning. I completely lost it. Started screaming at him about leading me on, about ruining my relationship with Tyler for nothing, about how he was just like every other guy who uses women and throws them away. He told me to calm down, that we'd figure something out, but I could see in his eyes that he wanted nothing to do with me anymore. Driving home, I kept trying to call him, but he wasn't answering. By that night, he'd blocked my number. The next morning, he'd blocked me on social media too. Just like that, my escape plan evaporated, and I was left holding the biggest secret of my life, with nowhere to turn. The reality started sinking in that I'd have to tell Tyler everything. Not just about the pregnancy, but about the whole lie I'd been living for months. And unlike Jackson, Tyler couldn't just block me and pretend I didn't exist. We had 3 years of history, shared friends, shared responsibilities. This was going to destroy everything. But first, I had to figure out how to spin this story so I didn't come out looking like the villain. I spent 3 days planning exactly how to tell Tyler about the pregnancy, and I'm not proud of the manipulation that went into it. I chose his birthday weekend because I knew he'd be in a good mood, and we were supposed to meet up anyway to check in on our separation progress. I met him at our old coffee spot downtown, the one where we had our first date. Strategic choice. Lots of good memories there. Public place, so he couldn't make a scene. Neutral territory. I showed up looking appropriately distressed, like I'd been crying and hadn't slept, which wasn't hard since I actually hadn't slept in days. I started with the vulnerability approach. Told him how much I'd missed him, how the separation had shown me how much he meant to me, how I'd made some mistakes while trying to figure myself out. I was building up to the big revelation slowly, trying to frame it as a moment of weakness, rather than months of calculated deception. I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear, I said, reaching across to touch his hand. I was confused and hurting, and I made a mistake with someone from my past. It only happened once, and I immediately regretted it. Tyler just stared at me. Didn't pull his hand away, didn't interrupt, just waited for me to continue. His calmness was terrifying. "I'm pregnant," I said, and then quickly added, "and I don't know what to do." The silence stretched forever. Tyler's face didn't change expression at all, which freaked me out more than if he'd started yelling. Finally he asked, "How far along?" When I told him, I watched him do the math in his head. We'd been intimate during my last visit 3 weeks ago, so the timing could technically work for either scenario. But I could see in his eyes that he knew. He's always been smart about details. "Who is he?" Tyler asked, still in that same calm voice. I gave him the sanitized version. An old friend from high school, someone I'd reconnected with online, a moment of weakness when I was feeling lost and confused about our relationship. Made it sound like a one-time mistake instead of the ongoing affair it actually was. That's when Tyler started asking the questions I was dreading. How long had I been talking to this guy? Was this why I wanted the separation? Had I planned this whole thing? Each question was like a knife, because he was putting together the puzzle pieces I'd tried so hard to scatter. I got defensive, turned it back on him. "I'm going through something traumatic here, and you're interrogating me like I'm a criminal. I thought you'd be more supportive." Classic move. Make him feel guilty for having reasonable reactions to being betrayed. But Tyler wasn't buying it. He asked more questions, and my story kept falling apart. Why hadn't I mentioned reconnecting with old friends before? Why were my therapy appointments always in the next town over? When exactly did this one-time mistake happen? I started getting angry that he wasn't just accepting my explanation and moving forward. Look, we were separated. Technically, we weren't even together when this happened. I was trying to figure out my feelings, and I made a mistake. But I'm here now, telling you the truth, trying to work things out. "Were we separated, or were you cheating?" Tyler asked, and that question hit different. Because yeah, I'd been careful to call it a separation, not a breakup, specifically so I could keep him as backup while I explored other options. The conversation went downhill fast. I tried bringing up his past mistakes, times when he'd hurt my feelings or let me down, trying to create some kind of equivalency. But he just sat there listening, not taking the bait, not getting emotional enough for me to play victim. Finally he said, "I need some time to think about this." And he left. Just walked out of the coffee shop while I sat there with my half-finished latte, pregnant and alone, and realizing my manipulation tactics had completely backfired. That night he texted me that he was staying with his cousin for a while. No anger, no drama, just a simple statement of fact. Somehow that felt worse than if he'd called me names or threatened to leave me. It felt final. The next few weeks were pure desperation mode. I knew I was losing control of everything, so I launched into full damage control, trying to manage the situation from every angle. First, I called Tyler's mom. I knew she'd always liked me, and I figured if I could get his family on my side, they'd pressure him to work things out. I played up the pregnancy hormones angle, told her I was scared and confused and just needed Tyler's support during this difficult time. Made it sound like we'd had a small fight that got blown out of proportion. She was sympathetic, but also asked pointed questions about the separation and why Tyler seemed so hurt. I gave her the same sanitized version. Moment of weakness, old friend, immediate regret, just need forgiveness, and a chance to make things right. Then I started working social media. Posted about the struggles of unexpected pregnancy, the challenges of relationships, vague quotes about forgiveness and second chances. I was fishing for public support, hoping people would see me as the vulnerable, pregnant woman who needed compassion, not the cheating girlfriend who destroyed her own relationship. But I couldn't let go of Jackson either. Even though he'd blocked me everywhere, I knew where he worked. I showed up at his job site during lunch break, thinking maybe if I could talk to him face to face, remind him of our connection, he'd step up, and we could figure things out together. That was a disaster. He was mortified that I'd shown up at his workplace, pulled me aside, and told me in no uncertain terms that he wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. Said he was working things out with his ex-wife, and I needed to move on. When I started crying and making a scene, his coworkers started staring. Security ended up escorting me off the property. The humiliation was crushing, but it also made me more determined to get Tyler back. If Jackson wasn't going to be my happy ending, then Tyler had to be. I couldn't end up alone and pregnant with nothing to show for blowing up my life. I started leaving Tyler voicemails, long rambling messages about how sorry I was, how I'd learned from my mistakes, how we could raise this baby together, regardless of who the biological father was. I told him I'd do anything to make it right, go to counseling, move wherever he wanted, whatever it took. But I also started making subtle threats. If he abandoned me during this pregnancy, what would people think? His family, our friends, everyone who knew us, they'd see him as the guy who walked out on his pregnant girlfriend. I reminded him that his own dad had left his mom when she was pregnant with his little sister, and how much that had hurt their family. The threats backfired spectacularly when Tyler's cousin played one of my voicemails for their family group chat. Everyone heard me going from sweet and apologetic to manipulative and threatening in the same message. Tyler's sister texted me directly, telling me to stop harassing her brother and get help. My own family started getting tired of my drama too. My parents had been supportive at first, but as the story kept changing and they started putting pieces together, they became more frustrated with me. My mom asked me directly if I'd been cheating on Tyler, and when I gave her the same moment of weakness story, she just shook her head and said she was disappointed in me. My sister was even more blunt. She told me I'd made my bed, and now I had to lie in it, that Tyler deserved better than what I'd put him through. Said I needed to stop trying to manipulate everyone and start taking responsibility for my choices. But I couldn't accept that this was all my fault. In my head, Tyler was being stubborn and unforgiving. Jackson was a coward who led me on. My family wasn't being supportive when I needed them most. Everyone was failing me when I was going through the hardest time of my life. I became obsessed with controlling the narrative, making sure everyone knew I was the victim here. Posted more about the challenges of being pregnant and alone, about learning who your real friends are during difficult times. But the sympathy wasn't coming like I expected. People were starting to see through the manipulation. The final straw came when I found out through mutual friends that Tyler was doing really well. He'd started going to therapy, working out regularly, advancing at his job. People said he seemed lighter, happier, more confident. He wasn't moping around or begging me to come back like I had expected. He was actually thriving without me. That's when I realized I might have lost him for good, and the panic set in completely. The next few months were like watching my entire life crumble in slow motion. And the worst part was seeing Tyler not just survive without me, but actually flourish. Through mutual friends, social media, I got glimpses of his new life, and it was everything I'd told myself he wasn't capable of. He'd apparently been going to therapy twice a week, working through what he called relationship trauma. That stung because obviously I was the trauma he was recovering from. He joined a gym and was posting progress pictures that showed he was getting ripped. He got promoted at work and was talking about maybe going back to school. Everything about him looked different, confident, happy, purposeful. Then came the real knife to the heart. About 4 months after our breakup, I saw through a friend's Instagram story that he was dating someone new. Her name was Sarah, and she was everything I'd always made fun of other women for being. Basic job, basic style, basic interests. The kind of girl who posts pictures of her coffee and thinks that's content. But Tyler looked genuinely happy with her in a way I'd never seen him look with me. Not that desperate, trying too hard happiness of someone overcompensating, but actual joy. They were doing normal couple things, hiking, trying new restaurants, going to farmers markets. All the stuff I used to complain was boring when Tyler suggested we do it together. I became obsessed with stalking their relationship online. Sarah's Instagram was public, and I'd spend hours analyzing every post, every comment Tyler left, every picture of them together. They looked so easy and comfortable with each other. No drama, no games, no manipulation. Just two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Meanwhile, my life was falling apart in every possible way. The stress of single pregnancy was brutal, but I couldn't afford to reduce my hours at work. The bills were piling up without Tyler's income, and I'd had to move into a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a sketchy part of town. My professional reputation took a hit after the incident at Jackson's workplace. Word got around about the crazy pregnant lady who'd caused a scene, and it made its way back to people in my industry. I ended up having to take a lower-paying position at a smaller company where nobody knew my history. The isolation was the worst part, though. My parents were still in my life, but our relationship was strained. They were disappointed in the choices I'd made and tired of the constant drama I brought to family gatherings. My sister barely spoke to me anymore, said she couldn't handle my negativity and victim complex. Most of my friends had gradually faded away too. Turns out, when your entire personality becomes complaining about how unfairly life is treating you, people stop wanting to hang out. The few friends who tried to maintain the relationship got exhausted by my constant need for validation and support, without ever giving anything back. I tried dating apps, thinking maybe I could find someone who'd want to step into a ready-made family situation. But being visibly pregnant and bitter about your ex doesn't exactly make you a catch on Tinder. The few guys who did match with me were clearly just looking for easy hookups with someone they assumed was desperate. The pregnancy itself became this constant reminder of how badly I'd screwed up my life. Every doctor's appointment alone, every ultrasound picture with no one to share it with, every kick and movement from a baby whose father wanted nothing to do with us. I started resenting the pregnancy, seeing it as the reason my perfect plan had fallen apart instead of acknowledging that my choices had led to this outcome. But the absolute worst moment came when I was about 7 months pregnant and ran into Tyler and Sarah at the grocery store. I looked horrible, hadn't slept well in weeks, wearing stretched-out maternity clothes that made me look even more pregnant and pathetic. They looked like they'd just come from a workout class together, all glowing and healthy and happy. Tyler was polite but distant, asked how I was doing in that careful way people talk to someone they used to know. Sarah was actually kind, congratulating me on the pregnancy and asking when I was due. She seemed genuinely nice, which somehow made it worse than if she'd been a witch I could hate. They were buying ingredients for some elaborate dinner they were cooking together, talking about a hiking trip they'd planned for the weekend. Everything about their interactions showed how comfortable and secure they were together. Tyler introduced Sarah to people they ran into, posted pictures of their adventures, clearly wasn't hiding their relationship or treating it as temporary. Standing there in the cereal aisle, visibly pregnant and alone, watching the life Tyler had built without me, I finally understood that he wasn't coming back. This wasn't a phase or a rebound relationship. He'd genuinely moved on and found someone who made him happier than I ever had. The realization hit me that I'd thrown away a good man who loved me for a fantasy that was never real. Tyler had been faithful, supportive, and patient with my moods and manipulation for 3 years. He'd been ready to build a life with me, and I'd destroyed it, chasing excitement and validation from someone who saw me as disposable. But even facing the complete destruction of my life, I couldn't fully accept that it was all my fault. I was still angry at Tyler for not fighting harder for our relationship, still bitter that Jackson had led me on, still convinced that if people really cared about me, they would have supported me through my mistakes instead of abandoning me when I needed them most. The baby was born 2 months later, and the paternity test confirmed what I'd suspected. Jackson was the father. Not that it mattered, since he'd made it clear he wanted no part of our lives. I named the baby Aiden and tried to convince myself that being a single mom was empowering and that I didn't need anyone else. But late at night, feeding Aiden alone in my tiny apartment, I'd scroll through social media and see Tyler and Sarah's life continuing to flourish. They'd moved in together, adopted a dog, were talking about engagement. Tyler looked like a completely different person, confident, settled, genuinely content. I kept waiting for the karma to hit them, for their perfect relationship to implode the way mine had. But it never happened. They just kept being happy together while I struggled alone with the consequences of my choices. still unable to fully admit that I'd created every bit of my own misery.